Okay, guys, our book this week is The Crayon Man. It is a true story of the invention of Crayola crayons. I thought this book was perfect for you because you guys are my little artists. This book is written by Natasha Bybau and it's illustrated by Steven Celerano. The Crayon Man. And this is the real story of how crayons were created. So this book would be non-fiction. It is not fake, it is real. Get ready because this week we also have a super cool science experiment for our Zoom call. So stay tuned for that. We got to read the book first to learn how we're going to do the science experiment. Once there was a man who saw color everywhere. He noticed the yellow-orange petals on the black-eyed Susans in his garden. He marveled at the rich scarlet-red tones of the cardinal's feathers. He admired the deep blue greens of the water and the sea. Color made him really, really happy. Look at that beautiful artwork. But all day long at work, all he saw was black dust, black tar, black smoke, black ink, black dye, black shoe polish. And over here, here's a little fun fact. His company sold carbon blocks, a new kind of pigment, which means color, or colored substance made from soot of burning oil and natural gas. People used it to print inks, electric sheet lamps, and stove and shoe polish. It also made rubber car tires that lasted long. So if you think about all those things, those are all black. There's not much color. His name was Edwin Binney, and he was an inventor. He worked with his cousin C. Harold Smith. Together they were Binney and Smith. This says Binney and Smith, and they're creating their own work site. Harold was a great salesman. He loved to travel the world. Edwin was curious. He had a knack for listening and making what people needed. So he is an inventor. Edwin invented a new kind of inexpensive slate pencil that wrote very smoothly. It was gray and children loved it. He also invented a kind of chalk that wasn't dusty and didn't crumble. It was white. Teachers loved it. So slate is something that people could use to write, and it was gray, and then he found a perfect chalk for teachers. He created it. He invented a wax crayon that would write on wood and paper packaging. It was really, really black. People loved it. So back a long time ago, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, paper was super expensive. So children wrote with slate pencils or chalk on slates, which is like a blackboard. That's what they wrote on because paper was so much money. So when everyone, including Edwin's wife Alice, told him that children needed better, cheaper crayons, he listened. Because kids love to color and they want to have that option. Back then they didn't because it was too expensive. So Edwin got to thinking. They said, the crayons we have are big and dull and clumsy. The lumps of colored clay only make fat, chunky lines. And the artists' crayons from Europe are way too expensive. They crumble and break easily. Some are even poisonous. So back then the crayons were even poisonous. So that's another reason kids couldn't use them. Alice used to be a school teacher, his wife, so she knew what children needed, and she encouraged Edwin to invent better crayons. Edwin thought about his company's inventions. When you drew a picture with their gray slate pencil, it rubbed off at the drop of a hat, so you could rub away. When he drew a picture with white chalk, it smudged everywhere. If he drew a picture with his new, really black crayon, it was, well, really black. None of these inventions were any good for drawing in color. He's thinking over here, and it kind of looks like he has an idea. So Edwin listened, and Edwin invented. In a small stone mill in Pennsylvania, in a top secret lab, Edwin's team experimented. So they tried out different concoctions, different mixes, in different ways. How could they make a better, stronger crayon? Melted paraffin wax? Maybe. So the first colored crayons invented in Europe were made of a mixture of charcoal and oil, and they broke so easy. So to make stronger crayons, Edwin tried using wax instead. Now for the crayon colors. Grinding up rocks and minerals into fine powders. So how cool is this? He put rocks and different other colored things in this big machine, and they would turn it and it would crush it to teeny tiny pieces. Mixing slate for gray, earth for yellow, red and brown? Maybe. Oh yes, and lapids for blue. Pounding, stiffing, and heating the colors and powders. Would they be bright enough? Edwin's team kept trying and trying. They kept on experimenting. So experiments don't always go right the first time, and that's what's so important about science. Think back to when we made that slime in class. The first time that I tried to make it, it didn't work, so I had to try again, and that was a great example of experiments. So ground up rocks and minerals made bright pigments or colors for crayons. Red iron oxide for red, yellow iron oxide for yellow, varied shades of red iron oxide for brown, carbon black for black, zinc oxide for white, and imported ultramarine made from lapids lazuli for blue. They came home covered in color. So think back, that's totally different from his first job. They did not come back in color. He came back in all black. So this is definitely a new life for Edwin. They experimented some more and they discovered a pinch of pigment, a sploosh of that one, a little hotter, a little cooler, and voila, lots of different shades. Now there were greens and orange and pinks too. Edwin came home covered in colors. To make orange, green, and violet, chemists, which are scientists, blended different types of colors in clay, and some of the colors changed when they were hot. So the length of the time that they were left in the heat changed the colors. So that's something they learned with experimenting. In a large tub at the mill, Edwin's team measured out ingredients: melted wax, clay to thicken, smoothing, something for texture, colored powders, each in just the right amount every time to make a top secret formula. Slowly, carefully, stirring by hand, they poured the special formula into thin crayon-shaped molds, smaller than other inventors, but just the right size for children's hands. The mixture cooled and hardened, and Edwin watched and waited. So here's the molds, and I want you to remember that word because it's going to be in our science experiment this week. These molds are definitely smaller than those big chunky ones that kids were having to use before. So you see all the crayons, they're waiting and waiting for them to cool down. Children that are young, like if you have a younger brother or sister, they could eat or chew crayons and get sick. So Edwin's team created non-toxic, which would not make kids sick if they accidentally ate a crayon. Finally, one summer evening in June 1903, Edwin came home covered in color and announced that he had invented a new colored crayon. But what would he call it? Alice had an idea. She said, let's mix the French word crayon for stick of chalk and the word ola from the word oleaginous, meaning oily, like the oily texture of the crayon wax, to invent a new word. So he heard Crayola, Crayola. Crayola. Edwin listened. Benny and Smith shipped out the first Crayola crayon boxes: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, browns, and black. 8 colors for only a nickel. Edwin waited. Would children like them? So there were 8 crayons in the first box of Crayola crayons. The children did. Now they could draw tiny green caterpillars or a big blue sky. Their drawings wouldn't smudge and they wouldn't rub out. They were bright and could last long time. In the 1900s, which again is hundreds of years ago, inventors had figured out how to make cheaper paper from wood pulp. So children now could draw on paper instead of just slate. So by this time, they were creating paper that wasn't so expensive and kids were able to draw. Excitement over the new colorful invention spread like wildfire. Admirers from far and wide flocked to marvel at Benny and Smith's inventions at the St. Louis World Fair. The company's dustless chalk even won a gold medal. Proudly, Edwin and Harold showed it off, especially on their new Crayola boxes. So these were their boxes back in the day, and it says gold medal because they won a gold medal. It definitely looks different from our crayon boxes now, but it kind of has the same look because we still have this orangish yellow and green. So they kept it but changed it. Every day, Edwin bought colorful bouquets from his garden to inspire the Crayola team. They made crayons in even more different shades, and later they asked children to help name some of the crayons. So when you pick up a crayon and you read the color, you'll notice that they're all different, and back then they even asked the kids their opinion. So to celebrate their 19th anniversary, Crayola held a color naming competition. A 6-year-old winner coined tropical rainforest. Other color names created by children included Robin's Blue Egg, Tickle Me Pink, and Macaroni and Cheese. At last, because of Edwin Benny, the man who saw in color everywhere, who had a knack for listening and making what people needed, children around the world could reach for just the right shade. Look at all those different shades. You have sun glow, you have screaming green and lavender and timberwolf and all these different colors, and you can create the most beautiful artwork in all the whole world to draw anything you want. So here is an example of how crayons are made in factories now. So now they're not made just by a couple people. They're made by huge businesses and manufacturers, which they use big machines to create these crayons. So you'll see this is one of the big factories, and they're mixing and heating and creating these colors, and they're putting them in the molds, and they're just, this is so cool. So they actually have a video of this, and this is Edwin Benny right here. This is what he looked like in real life. They actually have a super cool video that I will post up for you guys to watch on how crayons are made, and I hope that you're able to tune into our Zoom call this week because I have such a cool science experiment for us. I hope you guys love this book.